Tito was already doing it on his own before we put a name on Love Tito's.
He used to give it away, which of course included charitable events.
Tito allows each of the employees to choose what charity in their local community they want to give back to.
I think that's the end goal, is to do something that has meaning and purpose.
We're here in this company to make the world a better place, and we like to think we're doing it through Tito's handmade vodka.
Welcome, everyone, to the 10th Annual Ultimate Tailgate Party. My name is Andrew Zimmern, and I've been involved with Loving Spoonfuls since the very beginning, and I'm also a member of the Culinary Board. Food rescue is important. It's always been that way, and now more than ever, this work is critical. Preventing food waste and feeding hungry folks is what Loving Spoonfuls does. And between COVID-19 and the ever-growing number of people falling below the poverty line, Loving Spoonfuls continues to serve. Nonetheless, we're celebrating 10 years in the business and on the road. This is one of my favorite events in the country, and I'm just heartbroken that I'm not able to see my friends, be in Boston with you all, see my fellow Culinary Board members, and eat all of that amazing food. But the show must go on. Tonight, we will be joined by champions of food rescue from all parts of the region and all parts of the country. And even though we're apart, we are together in our commitment to Loving Spoonfuls and to the people who need us. The program tonight is pretty darn fantastic. If you've seen Driven by Food, you know I love music, and I'm psyched that Lake Street Dive is going to perform a special song tonight. In fact, drummer Mike Calabrese is a member of our Friends of Lovin' Spoonfuls group, and he'll share a bit about his involvement with us in a while. We're also going to hear from Wes Moore, the CEO of Robin Hood, and we're going to take you on a virtual ride along with our new video focusing on frontline workers. Lastly, we're going to raise some money, and that is absolutely mission critical. And since I can't call on you and shame you as I usually do into raising your paddles this year, consider this my best effort to make it happen. Everything contributed tonight will literally fuel the work of Lovin' Spoonfuls. It will support their hopeful expansion, and it will directly impact thousands of individuals throughout Massachusetts. Again, huge thank you to all of our sponsors, donors, and friends that have joined us tonight, all in support of the great work of Lovin' Spoonfuls. Please enjoy the program.
For some people, especially the people in the inner city, it's hard to get healthy food because it's expensive. It's ironic, but that's the reality. I have 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl. My last 2 were twins.
I know every parent want to try to feed their children, and certainly my parents did, but circumstance sometimes does not allow that.
I lived in a small town, and it was mainly restaurants, and I couldn't find a job. I was making like less than $200 a week, and I couldn't really afford my rent and food at the same time. So I was relying on some of the pantries there and really appreciated that.
Everywhere that I serve, the need has gone up. It doesn't matter which region. More and more people are having to choose between food and their bills. And it's something that is still kind of invisible.
I don't think that we are going to see the effects of COVID on these disproportionately impacted communities until far into next year. And this is going to be after some of these smaller pantries and service centers don't reopen.
Until the systems of food production and food distribution are solved, you need things like Lovin' Spoonfuls, not only to raise awareness about that disconnect, but to create the connection that starts to ameliorate that problem.
Just because it's a food pantry doesn't mean it's bad food. It's not. It's excellent food. I would go to the supermarket and just buy stuff that was cheap, but it wasn't healthy. But because of my budget, I couldn't afford, like good vegetables and stuff because they are expensive. So This has been a blessing. We need to eat every day regardless of what's going on. So knowing that that food is there and then I know where to go to get it and then it's gonna be there, it's just a peace of mind.
Being hungry and waiting for food, it's damaging and it has long-term effect. And it's something that should never happen, really. But I see it firsthand, I hear it firsthand.
No, from other places. The institutionalized systems of this country do not support people. There's really no safety net for the working class, for people who are marginalized. And I recognize that, and I feel like I have something to give back and to help alleviate that pain a little bit.
Weekly, Spoonfuls send the drivers with a load of healthy food. We definitely collect the same day and put it out the same day. So it's fresh food, decent food, and be blessing the community.
What I see Lovin' Spoonfuls doing is they're connecting a few critical dots that, given the food systems in our country, are not being connected.
Food is what we need to survive, to recover. It's what connects us as human beings, right? From a very basic biological level.
It's unfortunate that hunger still happens, but I always think of the people I serve because I feel like it's a privilege for me to serve the people I serve. Food is a human right. I am an immigrant. I'm a refugee. Came here when I was 5, and I know firsthand what food insecurity means. That was a part of me growing up. I learned how to cook at a very young age because I have to eat and there's nobody home. Not having food at home, not having family at home because they're working, that really affected my relationship with my family because hunger does a lot of things. I can remember during the refugee camp days where there would be a truck that comes by every week with sardines and what have you, rice and stuff like that. So it's a personal thing for me. Having a good meal just makes everything better. There shouldn't be hungry people, not with the amount of food that we produce in this country. It's unfortunate that hunger still happens, but just the fact that it's right makes Loving Spoonfuls work very important. Every day I get gratification. It's easy to think of why I'm doing this. And I've had other jobs where I can't reconcile that. So I've never planned this, but it's kind of full circle. It reminds me of what it is to be a human and what a humanity means. It's not something theoretical. It's real. It's the people. That's what food is. It's culture, it's understanding. I wish every job could be this gratifying.
While we are all here raising money for Lovin' Spoonfuls, the ripple effect of Spoonfuls' efforts throughout the communities that they serve cannot be underestimated, and all coming at a time when more and more people are desperately in need. And I know I say this every year, and it is true. Each year the need, sadly, in America is greater. But this year, the difference, the depth and the breadth of that increased need to support Lovin' Spoonfuls, well, it's never been greater. So let me explain to you. There are a few ways that you can support Lovin' Spoonfuls this year. First, we have the $500 Whole Foods Market gift card raffle. Raffle tickets can be purchased via the link in the chat box. Each ticket costs $25. The winner will be emailed after the drawing ends this Friday. Another option is the virtual grocery bag wall. I love this. With a donation of $250, you can help Spoonfuls feed a family of 4 for the remainder of 2020. Now, last year we sold nearly 100 bags, feeding hundreds of families during the holiday season. The link to make that donation is in the chat box as well. Finally, we hope you consider making a donation in any amount this evening. Every dollar donated helps feed one person for a day. Every single dollar equals one person fed for a day. So please know that your gift will have a significant impact. For example, $500 rescues more than 1,500 pounds of food, creating more than 1,200 meals. $100 rescues more than 300 pounds of food, creating more than 240 meals. $50 rescues more than 150 pounds of food, creating more than 120 meals. So let's do something really incredible tonight. Thank you everyone for your generous support of this work. Now, on to the rest of the program.
Andrew, thank you so much for your leadership, for your friendship, and for your extraordinary efforts, not just on behalf of Love and Spoonfuls tonight, but for the betterment of all. Good evening, everyone. I am Ashley Stanley. I'm the founder and executive director of Love and Spoonfuls, and I am thrilled that you have all made the time to join us for tonight's 10th annual Ultimate Tailgate. While I'm of course sad not to see you all in person, I am grateful that we can be together here. This year is different for all of us, but one thing that remains is that in order for community events to happen, live or virtual, support from community sponsors is essential. And so I want to thank our friends at Constant Contact, at Tito's Handmade Vodka, and at Whole Foods for their incredible support of this event and for our work throughout the year. I also want to recognize and thank our entire board of directors, our culinary board, and our Friends Advisory Board for their ongoing support and leadership each and every day. Everyone has so much going on, and to be able to continue to rely on our support system, even in a time like this, is quite remarkable. So we thank you for that. Lastly, but certainly not least, I want to thank the team at Love and Spoonfuls. From our front line to senior leadership, this year continues to test us all. But I remain hopeful and inspired, and that's because of you and your work. I thank you for that. Last year, as we discussed what this tailgate would be, we, like all of you, had no idea what we would be contending with. For us, 2020 was supposed to be about our 10-year anniversary, and what a milestone that is. Tailgate is and always has been my favorite part of the year since the beginning. And as we realized that it would have to take a different shape this year, I was pretty disappointed. Tonight, though, all I feel is gratitude, because while tonight isn't what we envisioned, it's exactly what it should be. It's about something bigger. It's about all of us, and it's about the others. In 2010, Love and Spoonfuls began as just one truck with one route and just a handful of partners. And 18 million pounds and 10 years later, we now work in over 50 cities and towns across Greater Boston, the Metro West, and Hampden County, rescuing more than 80,000 pounds of food and serving over 30,000 people each week. We've gotten to know these communities, our partners, and even each other in a way that's really made us think about what tonight should actually be about. The intersection of COVID-19 and the social moment we find ourselves in has to be an opportunity to stand in solidarity, to be there for each other, and to hope together. And even though we can't break bread together, tonight we have music and we have a message. And I think you'll feel that at each part of the program. We don't know what's to come with COVID, but I do know that we will get through this. And with your support, we will look forward to being on the road for the next 10 years, supporting our community and advocating for food justice through food rescue. And in that spirit, I ask you all to find ways to support the people and the businesses that support Love and Spoonfuls each of the last 10 years, especially our restaurant community. They are hurting. Tailgate never has happened without their support, and it's our turn to step up for them. However you can, in whatever ways that you're comfortable, please support our restaurant partners. Food is what connects and unites a community. And so to our hospitality friends, we're here for you. We are all in this together. And I want you to have fun tonight and know that we will see each other soon. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Blackbird singing in the dead of Spoon porch.
Hello.
Whose idea was this? Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to rise. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the light of the dark night. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to rise. You were only waiting for this moment to rise. You were only waiting for this moment to rise.
Food waste, for the longest time, it's bothered me as a human. Growing up in an Italian family, you know, food is a big part of love, and when the community can't get together and can't share food like that, it's all the more important that people have access to it wherever they find shelter. A country that imports and produces so much food should not have a population that goes without food every day. To produce food, you need a lot of energy. To ship that food to people, you need a lot of energy. And when that food is wasted, not only were those emissions in vain, but when that food is taken to a landfill and rots, it produces greenhouse gas emissions. 40% of the food in the United States each year is wasted. And that contributes 8% of the greenhouse gas emissions in this country. That's why tackling food waste is one of the best ways you can help the environment and help people. The environmental impact of the touring industry has been something that my band has been conscious of more and more as we've grown. If you're not conscious of it, you're have this blind complicity in these kinds of problems, and it just makes sense to start becoming part of the solution if you can. We see so much consumption happening, and there don't seem to be a lot of systems in place to make it a sustainable industry. Last year, Lovin' Spoonfuls prevented the amount of CO2 that 1,400 cars emit in an entire year. And that, to me, especially in a city, is staggering. I kind of feel like being a friend of Lovin' Spoonfuls is offsetting food injustice in your community. This is work that is liberatory, not only for the people who benefit from it, but for the people who engage in it.
These vans are critical to our mission. We have to have refrigerated trucks in order to distribute the food in a safe, secure way. This truck right here will be servicing mostly the Metro Boston area, and we're able to serve people experiencing food insecurity because of our ability to have these trucks.
So Lovin' Spoonfuls and Whole Foods Market have really engaged on that next level of food access, and for us, Lovin' Spoonfuls makes that deeper level connection.
Next up, we have a keynote from guest speaker Wes Moore, the CEO of Robinhood, one of the biggest anti-poverty forces in the nation. Wes's first book, a perennial New York Times bestseller, The Other Wes Moore, tells the story of two kids named Wes Moore who were born blocks apart within a year of each other. Both grew up fatherless in similar Baltimore neighborhoods and had difficult childhoods. Both hung out on the street corners with their crews. Both ran into trouble with the police. So how then did one grow up to be a Rhodes Scholar, decorated veteran, White House fellow, and business leader, while the other ended up a convicted murderer serving a life sentence? Wes, the author of this fascinating book, sets out to answer this profound question. And tonight, Wes is here to talk with us about the intersection of food justice and racial equity. It's an important topic to all of us. Food insecurity disproportionately impacts Black, Brown, and Indigenous people, but we all have a role to play in creating a fair and just food system. As the late, great Senator Paul Wellstone from Minnesota, my personal mentor, always said, we all win when we all win. I'm looking forward to learning more from you, Wes, learning how we each can play a role and have an impact in our communities. Thank you for joining us.
Hey everybody, it is so good to see you. Wes Moore here, and I am so happy for this event, so happy for the inclusion in the event. I'm just incredibly sad that I am not able to be there in person for Lovin' Spoonfuls. From everything that I have seen and heard about the food that gets shared, I am missing out on a great event, the fact that we have to do this virtually. So I sincerely look forward to the day when I can get back in person and be able to enjoy and celebrate and highlight the remarkable work that you do in person while also filling my stomach with some wonderful, wonderful food. But I do want to also just to say thank you to all of you. Thank you not only for the work that you do, but also thank you for the work that you do at a really important time. Thank you for the work that you do for highlighting the fact that even though we've seen some disastrous impacts of COVID-19 in our communities, but the reality is that for so many of the communities that we live in and that we work in, that we serve and that we love, the issue of food insecurity has been an issue long before all of this. This has been an issue that people have been dealing with, and oftentimes when we're looking at the challenges of food insecurity, oftentimes we're looking at the challenges of generational poverty, that these are not things that are new, but that oftentimes these are things that are hard, they're calcified, and in many ways, they are inhumanely predictable. That's why your work matters so much. Your work matters because we are providing a basic human support to people who need and deserve a champion. And particularly at a time now when being a champion is needed so much. We have seen how the economic devastation of this virus has had absolutely catastrophic impacts on families and communities. We see a situation now where 1 in 4 parents are actually skipping meals to make sure that their children do not have to. We're watching a situation right now where in a matter of 11 weeks, we watched 11 years of job growth go away. And we're seeing situations where some of the industries that are getting hit hardest in all of this, particularly industries like hospitality, the food and the restaurant industry, also oftentimes industries that allowed entryways and entry points to so many of the workers who we care about and so many of the workers who we're talking about in this exact setting are the ones who were hit first, and frankly, the ones who could have the most difficult time regaining their footing. Your work matters now because right now we have a situation where people are trying to figure out what tomorrow looks like and why they can and should be hopeful. And you're providing that hope. You're providing that ability to know that people can believe that tomorrow hopefully can be better than today, but it's going to be because we are having a concerted all-in effort to be able to make it so. You're making it very clear about who it is that you're choosing to fight for. Who is it that you're choosing to advocate for? Who is it that you're choosing to believe in? What push and effort are you willing to make on behalf of the others? You know, when I first wrote the book that was just mentioned, The Other Wes Moore, I remember having a conversation with my publisher about it. And one thing I did not realize is that everything you see on the inside of a book, all the words, the content, the structure, everything like that, all that is what the author wants to share with the world. It's the author's ideas, it's the author's intent. Everything you see on the outside of books, the cover, the title, the airbrushed author photos on the back flap, all of that is what the publisher wants to share with the world. And the publisher will legally hold on to those rights for a reason. They hold on to those rights because it is their only chance to market to you as the consumer. And they will do whatever it takes to make something look interesting enough that they can then go back and actually have something where you can say, that looks interesting, and I'll go to the cash register and buy it, right? It's the publishing industry. I didn't know that. At the time, I actually thought they cared about what authors thought. And so when they called me in to have this conversation about what the title of my book should be, I thought this was going to be the actual English definition of the word conversation, which is we would exchange ideas back and forth. And so when they call me in and they say, Wes, we'd like to have a conversation about the title of your book, I kind of cut them off. And I said, you know, I'm so happy we're having this conversation because I put a lot of thought into it and I have a lot of ideas. And I started rattling off these different names of the book title that I thought were great. And I look at them and I say, so you all can go ahead and choose between any of those 6 titles because I'm good with any of them. And they looked at each other and they looked at me and they said, that's very kind of you, but we think we have a better idea. And they said, what do you think about The Other Wes Moore? And I paused and I thought about it and I told them, I think that's the dumbest book title that I've ever heard in my life. And then they looked at me and they said, what don't you like about it? And I said, there's a whole bunch of things I don't like about it. I said, but let me go ahead and start with 3. The first thing I told them I like about it was I tried to make it very clear that the story wasn't just about these 2 kids. So by putting the name inside of the title of the book, are you not completely negating that entire fact? All right, that's one. Second thing I told them I like about it. What self-respected author do you know that puts their own name inside of a title of a book that they have written? Right? No one's ever heard of the other J.K. Rowling or the other Stephen King or the other James Baldwin. And the third thing I told my like about it was I said, no one knows who one Wes Moore is. So I don't know why anyone would care who the other Wes Moore is. And so when I said that to them, they kind of looked and they smiled and laughed and they said, those are actually all really good points. And they said, the problem though, is that you're missing the point. Because you're absolutely right. It's not about you. And it's not about him. The name's completely irrelevant. You can throw any name inside of that book title. It really does not matter because the truth is there are Wes Moores that exist in every one of our communities. Every one of our schools. Every one of our homes. People who are either one decision or one policy decision away from going in one direction or going in a completely different direction. People who every day are straddling this line of greatness. And the problem is they don't even know it. The most important thing about the title is not the name. The most important thing about the title is the other. And the fact that our society is full of others. People who might not look like us or speak like us. People who might come from a different part of town or a different part of the country or a different part of the world. People who understand firsthand the reality that when we're talking about things like schools, that these are not just necessarily places where students are learning their reading and their writing and their math, but knowing that our schools are also our largest food providers in this entire country for our children. Understanding the reality for how many people housing insecurity has been a certainty. that the name is completely irrelevant. The most important thing about the title is the other. In this moment that we find ourselves in, we find ourselves being asked a fundamental question about who is it that we are going to choose to fight for? Who is it that we are going to spend our time advocating for? Who is it that we're going to use our voice to push for better policies for? Who is it that we are going to use our philanthropic gifts, our time gifts, our energy gifts, our thoughts? Who is going to be the recipients of those? And oftentimes when I look at the work that you all are doing, it's making sure that people who might feel left out of conversations and even not even being thought about in the conversations, that their voices are also heard in all of this as well. You know, I only have 2 memories of my father. The first memory was when I was about 4 years old, and I have an older sister who was about 6 years older than me, and I have a younger sister who's about 13 months younger than me. And my mother had a bunch of rules in her house, but one of the big rules that she had in her house was that men do not put their hands on women. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized the reason that she was so insistent on that rule was because of her own past. And so she always said she would never tolerate that if she saw it, and she especially would not tolerate it if she saw it in her son. But I would get into these fights with my older sister, and not like little fights. I'm talking like real fights, like closed fist fights. And every time my mother would see it, she would break us up, and no matter what was going on, it was always my fault. And so she would always break us up, and she would say, "You do not put your hands on women. You do not put your hands on women." And I explained to her, I said, "But mommy, that's not a woman. That's Nikki. That's different." And my mother didn't see the difference between the two. And then one day I was sitting there and I was minding my own business, and Nikki comes up to me and she starts blowing in my face. Like, I told her to stop and she wouldn't stop. Finally, I got up and I ran after her and I caught her. And when I caught her, I cocked my fist back and I punched her. And as soon as I connected with her, I saw my mom. So I'm like, this is about to get real bad, real quick. And I'm running in the other direction. My mother's running after me. And I run to my bedroom. And the bedroom that we lived in was basically a closet that they turned into a bedroom after my baby sister was born. So inside of this bedroom was a small bed for me and a crib for my baby sister. And that was all that was inside of this room. And I'm there and I'm waiting for the punishment that was about to be handed down to me. And the door opened up and my father walked in the room. And when he walked into the room, he came in and he sat down on the bed and he put me on his lap. And he started explaining to me what I'd done so wrong. And why my job is to protect women, not to put my hands on them. Why my job is to protect my family and not to go after them. And he told me that I had to go apologize to my mother and to my sister. But he told me he would come with me. And like I mentioned, I didn't know at the time, but the reason that my mom was so insistent on this was because of her own past. And so when I remember walking down with my dad, holding his hand, and I remember one thing, how he was a big guy and how my whole hand wrapped around just 2 of his fingers. And the only other memory I have of him was about 6 months later when he died in front of me. And as difficult as I thought I had it, as difficult as I thought my sisters had it, the person who really had it most difficult was my mom. Because she was now a widow who was going to raise these 3 kids on her own. In no way was this a life that she had expected or prepared for. This was not the life that she dreamed of. It wasn't until I was 14 years old that my mother got her first job that actually gave her benefits. It wasn't until I was 14 years old that my mother got her first job that gave her reliable work hours. It wasn't until I was 14 years old that my mother got a job that she didn't have to work multiple part-time jobs. But as difficult as she was having that initial transition, she eventually called up my grandparents, her parents, and said that she needed help, and they gave her the answer that she was hoping that they would give, which is bring the kids up here and we can help out. And my grandfather was a minister in the South Bronx. My grandmother was a school teacher for 25 years in the South Bronx, and their house was barely big enough for them, but they figured out a way to make it big enough for all of us. And almost immediately as I got up there, I found myself getting lost. Hurting people that actually did love me so I could impress people that could care less about me. Picking and choosing which days were worthwhile to go to school and which ones weren't. By the time I was 11 years old was the first time that I felt handcuffs on my wrists. At 11. By the time I was 13, I got sent to a military school for what I thought was a mandatory year in military school, a place that I absolutely hated when I first showed up because I had some issues and I got in some trouble and I had to go there. I ran away 5 times in the first 4 days. In fact, they had these big black gates that surrounded the school, and they would always say to us, if you don't like it here, you can go home anytime you want. And so every time they would turn their backs, I would just take them up on their offer and try to run away from the school. The second last time I tried to run away from the school was when they found me in the middle of the woods trying to find a train station. The reason I was in the middle of the woods trying to find a train station was because my squad leader actually gave me a map on how to get to the train station. And literally where he came into my room and he pulls out this map and he's like, listen, it's obvious you don't want to be here. And quite honestly, we really don't want you here either. So here is a map on how to get to the train station. I remember looking at that map, and when he first handed it to me, I thought he had handed me a lottery ticket. Like, there were seriously tears welling up in my eyes. And I was like, I'll never forget you. You know, when you get out, let me know. We'll grab lunch or something. And he's just like, just get out of there. And I took this map out to the middle of the woods, and I was following it out to a T. And I just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper into the woods. And then finally, I just sat down and I started crying because, first of all, I was scared to death because all I knew at that point in my life were cities. I don't know the woods and I don't know the trees and the forest. But then also, I was just completely frustrated because I felt like I'm trying to tell these people what I need and they're not hearing me. And I found out that the map was fake because they all followed me out to the middle of the woods. You know, the map, they just enjoyed watching me do circles in the middle of the woods. And they wanted to see how bad I wanted to go home. And that night they got their answer that I was really ready to go home. So they let me make one phone call. They said, call whoever you want, we don't care, but you got 5 minutes. And I called the only number that I knew, which was my mom. She wasn't expecting to hear from me for about 8 weeks. And now here it was on day 4 at 1 o'clock in the morning, her phone rings. And she asked me if I'm okay. And I said, yeah, mommy, I'm good. Thanks so much for this wonderful opportunity, but I'm really ready to come home. You know, do you need directions on how to get here tomorrow morning? And I started going through this whole diatribe of things that she needed to do to make my life easier, without realizing that this is a woman who had sacrificed everything for her children. As my little sister used to say, our mother wore sweaters so we could wear coats. And I was telling her what she needed to do to make my life easier. And she stopped me. And she said, too many people have sacrificed in order for you to be there. And too many people are rooting for you. And you have to understand, it's not all about you. I listened to her talk. After 5 minutes, they said the time was up. I gave them back the phone. They sent me back up to my room. They hung up the phone. And I would be lying if I said anything changed that night, because it did not. I woke up the next morning even angrier. But eventually I began to understand what she was talking about. And the fact that the only way that I was going to make it was if my friends and my plea brothers were there to push me. The only way that they were going to make it was if I was there to push them. That we lived in a completely interconnected society. Everything about where we were depended on how the other people around you were doing. And the entire unit was built on that. Was built on the idea of, if someone asked you, how are you? your first answer should actually be asking the person next to them, how are you? And then their answer should be ask the person next to them, how are you? And their answer to ask the person next to them, how are you? And then down the line until we finally got to an answer that you return back to and say, we're doing all right. We're doing all right. As we think about this moment and this space that we find ourselves in, when we're asked the question, how are you? It becomes a big responsibility for all of us to be able to look down the line and be able to know that part of our response must be a question to the people around us. How are you? Because so much of that will define actually how we are doing, because we are a completely interconnected unit. That if we're not okay, and if you're not okay, then we're not okay. If you're struggling, we're struggling. If you're hungry, we're hungry. How do we build this sense of interconnectedness, of interdependence, of moving this transition from going to a measure of sympathetic love to a measure of empathetic love? Because there's a difference. Sympathetic love is I'm doing something because I feel bad for you. Empathetic love is I'm doing this because your pain is mine. And the work that you all are doing, that's empathetic love. That's making sure that when we are asked how we're doing, our response can genuinely be, we're doing okay. You know, at this military school that I got sent to, we had a colonel. He was a 3-time Vietnam vet, and this guy was as tough as nails. We used to laugh, say I think we only saw him smile once, and I think that was an accident. But his name was Colonel Billy G. Murphy. And he was tough, but he loved us, and he was fair. And we loved him back, but he was losing weight really quickly, to the point that we actually would joke until we knew what was going on and say that it looked like he was wearing his father's uniform, until we learned why he was losing weight so quickly. And one day he called the entire Corps cadets together, and we were all sitting in the chapel. He was standing up in the pulpit, and he told us that he was diagnosed with cancer and he had to leave the school. That was the last time we saw him. So the speech that he gave, in essence, was his farewell address. And as he was standing up there, he said something to us that I will never forget. He said, when it's time for you to leave here, whether it's time for you to leave this school, whether it's time for you to leave your job, whether it's time for you to leave your neighborhood, or whether it's time for you to leave this planet, make sure that it mattered that you were ever even here. Make sure that it mattered that you were ever even here, because none of us are promised anything. We're not promised more days or more weeks, more years. No one's ever tapped me on the shoulder and said, Wes, you got 6,554 days left, so pace yourself. And nobody ever will, and the truth is, I'm actually okay with that. And the other truth is that this year, as much as any year, has reminded us of life's impermanence. So the only thing that we know is that while we're here, let's do something with it. Let's push. Let's love. Let's fight. Let's advocate. Let's give. Let's serve. Let's make sure that the things that break other people's hearts are breaking ours as well. Let's make sure that we can have a situation that the things that we sometimes take for granted, the things we sometimes don't even think about, like wondering where our next meal is going to come from. Let's make sure that we can make those things that other people don't have to think about either. And that our job is not necessarily to save people. Because the communities that we're working in, they don't need saving. What they need is for us to continue to move the barriers that continue to stand in between them and their God-given destiny. For us to be champions in every definition of the word. For us to lead and for us to love. I'm incredibly grateful to be with you today. But most importantly, I'm incredibly grateful for the work that you do every day. I'm incredibly grateful for who you fight for. I'm incredibly grateful for who you serve. And I'm incredibly grateful that you understand and take on this ethos of, if you never forget who you're fighting for, you will never stop fighting. And we need that now as much as ever before. So bless you all. Thanks for all you do. I look forward to seeing you in person soon. And again, thanks for fighting for the others.
You've got big plans for your small business. And Constant Contact has everything you need to connect with customers, find new ones, and sell more of your awesome stuff online. With email marketing, online stores, and more to help you do more business anytime, anywhere. So you can keep powering on without slowing down. Up top, power on with Constant Contact. Try it free today.
Well, thank you all for being with us here tonight. We know that everyone is spending a lot of time online since the pandemic began, so we really appreciate your attendance and participation this evening. There is still time to make a donation, buy a Whole Foods Market raffle ticket, or support our virtual grocery wall. Check the link in the chat box to make your gift today. And once again, we're so grateful for the support of this community. I don't know when, but I will see you all in Boston soon. Until then, please remain safe and healthy, and thank you.